people often bring things into every conversation that are unseen. And so you're never actually just dealing with what you see on the outside. There's usually multiple layers. So sometimes you're able to kind of get underneath that and you're able to work through. And other times you have to recognize that there are some people who just want the conflict. And you have to make the decision, do you engage or do you step aside?
Today's guest is Michele Jawando, the CEO of Omidyar Network, where she spearheads efforts to make technology work in the service of society. Michele is an attorney who has served as counsel and board member for numerous organizations. She co-led the 2020 Global Election Integrity Team and is a regular commentator for international and U.S. media outlets on policy, law, and philanthropy. And now, here are your hosts, Mildred Otero and Taylor Stewart.
Hello, welcome to the Leaders Table. We're not here to talk titles or CVs, but to explore the moments that have shaped a leader. As we all know, those raw, real experiences that don't always make it to the spotlight. I'm Mildred Otero, president of Lee.
And I'm Taylor Stewart, vice president of platforms at Lee. Mildred, it is so great to have this episode today.
I am so excited for this episode. Today we are sitting with Michele Jawando, the CEO of Omidyar Network. She has been a remarkable leader who's been on an amazing journey. We have known each other for years. I'm so excited to have you here. Thanks for being here, Michele.
Thank you for having me. It has really been a full circle moment to be here with you. So I'm so excited. Thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, let's get started and dig in. You said a full circle moment, so we're going to start at the point to start a circle.
Okay.
And I'd love to hear a little bit about where you're from.
All right. So I am a New Yorker. I should say a New Yorker, and have always really been motivated by the opportunity to match power, community, policy, people together and what that looks like. And so growing up in New York, you are in we say the center of the world. And I come from a family that's always been deeply rooted in service and politics and community. And through that, found my way to Capitol Hill and had the honor and the distinct pleasure of working for some amazing public servants and leaders. And that's where I met Mildred when we were like baby lawyers on the Hill.
I love that. Thank you, Michele. One of the questions I think is always a good thing when we're thinking about how you grew up, what has shaped your leadership, who's the most important influence in your life, and what have they passed on to you?
Yeah, I always like to tell the story that for me, leadership has been both a reflection of where my family has been and those experiences, good and bad. And it's been a reflection of the village that I've acquired along the way. So I'm deeply rooted in faith and family. My great aunt was the first Black woman attorney on the island of Bermuda. My mother's family were deeply rooted in the Brooklyn civil rights, voting rights community that brought leaders like Shirley Chisholm and Sam Wright and supported their infrastructure. And so that was this beautiful combination of leadership that I come from. And then along the way, I've been able to acquire great mentors. Senator Kirsten Gillibrand from New York, Cassandra Butts, who was nominated to be an ambassador by President Obama and was one of the senior leaders at the Millennium Development Corporation. And she passed way too soon, but she was one of those bright lights who shifted and shaped how I saw the world. And I think having people like that in your life, Susan Molinari, who was a former Republican congresswoman from New York, who saw something in me and brought me to Google very early in my career. And so having these different people have been a reflection of what I've been able to do, what I've been able to accomplish, but have helped to mold me into the kind of leader I try to be every day.
This journey is so amazing, and I'm excited for the next questions to dive in more. You two have known each other for a while, so maybe nothing is surprising to Mildred, but can you tell me something that people would find surprising about you?
I am a huge sci-fi nerd. I grew up loving watching Star Trek and Star Wars and reading J.R. Tolkien and The Lord of the Rings. And it's funny, I tease that now sometimes people in tech watched Star Wars and they said, I want to be the evil empire versus the rebellion, but that's a whole nother story. We'll talk about that later. But when I watched those shows, I had the idea that there was something kind of revolutionary about using technology and using your imagination in service of a greater good. And I just see that thread throughout my career. I think we understand often each other in the world through stories. So I think there's something powerful about an inspirational story that unites people across race and class. I thought about Star Trek, which was like the United Colors of Benetton, with aliens and humanoids all working together. And they were always going to some galaxy to save people and not just excited about the technology, but they were in service with one another. And that was such a powerful, powerful image for me. And one of the things I really look back as kind of moments of inspiration, deep inspiration for me.
I could hear this all day because I'm imagining you as a younger Michele thinking about these things, and I love it. I think we're a leadership development organization, and we are trying to inspire the next generation of public servants. And public service is a big word. You have been a public servant. So share just a little bit of what does it mean to you and for you, and what's one piece of advice that you'd give someone starting out in public service?
I love that question so much, and I reflect back on some of the most meaningful work I have ever done in my career. Whether it was in the New York State Assembly, my first political job was working for Barbara Clark from Queens, New York, represent Queens in the House.
I love that.
In the New York State Assembly, and then all the way here on the House side, Congressman Greg Meeks, and then with Senator Gillibrand. And they are really difficult jobs. Mildred probably talks about that. You are working really long hours. Sometimes you are working without pay. You are dealing with the weightiest issues, whether it's in the international or in a domestic context. And you might be a year or two out of law school and you're holding space and recognizing that each decision that you are making to advise your member or your leader has implications for everyone in this country and sometimes in the world. And there's a sacredness to that. And so I think what I would tell someone starting in this space is that you are a part of a sacred profession and to hold it with that amount of respect, to really appreciate that even in the tensions of the difference of opinion, and I'm talking about people who are like serious policymakers, not the silliness that we sometimes see, but people who actually have differences of opinion on a policy issue, but they are in this sacred profession together trying to find a way forward. And that's a gift. And it is the best education you will ever have. So I would say take heart. You can't do it forever, but you are a part of something really special and worthy.
So you just said the best education you've ever had. Another effective teacher is the moment of failure that can sometimes come. So can you share a time where there was a failure in leadership that has shaped you and that was a big learning experience in your own journey?
I love that you ask people this question because I think they look at where leaders are now and you imagine like it's just been like a straight road.
Very linear.
You've had no drama and no times you've fallen on your face. And so one of the moments that shaped me, I was a young lawyer on the Hill. And I won't name this senator because they are no longer with us, but was a very senior senator, male senator. And at the time, I was advising Senator Gillibrand, and we had a really big hearing, and it was incredibly important. And, so I had been prepping her. And as a part of the preparation, there was just so much we wanted her to get out. Because this was such an important moment. And this was her opportunity to really introduce this issue. And in that, I forgot to ask how much time we had for her to do this introduction. And usually senators give each other respect and they don't gavel you down. Gavel you down means like you don't use the gavel to cut off your speaking.
Right.
Usually you just let someone talk. But she was the junior senator. She was a woman. And we had something to say. And I think sometimes people still struggle with those concepts of what power and agency looks like in different containers. So we were going through that process, and this older senator gavelled her down. And I remember my stomach, like my heart went into my stomach. And then at that moment, I felt, all of the shame and embarrassment for her. And I was upset because I hadn't prepared her to the best of my ability. And so I tell people, you want to be tight on the content, right? But you also want to know, what are my operational limitations in doing this work? I have never not asked the question, how long do I have? What's my audience? How do you do this? Where do you want me to sit? Who are the people I should be paying attention to for this moment? But that was hard. That was hard. And that felt like a failure. Now, she was wonderful and gracious, but I held that. And I recognized that even though we were saying all the things that needed to be said, sometimes there are other dynamics around power and respect and agency. And you have to hold that even when other people aren't going to be as respectful as you would be. So, yeah.
What a lesson, Michele.
Oh, girl.
What a lesson.
Now I can think about it, but
now you can reflect on it. And I appreciate that. Just probing a little further in your time in so many different spaces. One of the things that we often ask leaders is that there are always moments where our values are in tension. As we rise up in leadership, there are just new challenges, and it, just reflect a little bit of a time that you've been pulled in different directions by your own values, and how did you navigate that tension? Because I think for many of our listeners and our members, they may not have experienced that before. And when they, almost like recognizing it, that it's a tension, but then how do you actually navigate it?
Yeah. Listen, I think that there are, and this is a tough period, I think, as a country, because we are, not even as a country, because I'm just coming back from an international conference. Everyone is dealing with your values in tension, how people sometimes perform those values, the kind of oppositional nature that sometimes our technology and the way that we're currently engaging with each other, that conflict leads for engagement. And you get a different click rate for conflict than you do for being thoughtful and more considerate, right? Like that's just the facts of where we are.
Yes.
And we've lost a little bit of the civic infrastructure in this country to really know how to deal with those tensions. I'm a third generation lawyer on my dad's side. My mom is an AME minister, and she is a second generation preacher and woman of deep faith. She's a psychologist and a preacher. So it's like, there's a whole lot happening in that house. And so I think because of that, I've seen that people often bring things into every conversation that are unseen. And so you're never actually just dealing with what you see on the outside. There's usually multiple layers. So sometimes you're able to kind of get underneath that and you're able to work through. And other times you have to recognize that there are some people who just want the conflict. And you have to make the decision, do you engage or do you step aside? Now, other times you have to be able to deal with conflict in a way where you hold on to your space. And other times, is there something here that I need to hear and I need to learn to open myself up? And so just the kind of maturity of recognizing the space
Mm-hmm.
Is this somebody too far gone? Is this someone who just wants the conflict? Is there something that I need to do to reevaluate my position? And so holding all of that, you can enter into dialogue and conversation, and you can hear opinions that are different from your own, and you can figure out how you really respond.
Right.
And I think that that is a lost art. I think
Mhm.
true leaders
Yes.
have to hold complexity and nuance.
Mhm.
And we also have to hold space for who people are and what they're struggling with.
Absolutely. I think that another thing that at least some of the most interesting leaders to me hold is a curiosity about the world. I'd love to hear a little bit about what you are learning. What's something new that you're learning right now?
Ooh, I love this. Such great questions. So I work with an amazing group of individuals at the Omidyar Network who are brilliant, who are policymakers, who are artists, who are technologists, who are data scientists, who are people who just show up with a curiosity in the world. In fact, it's one of our values as an organization. We have a company value around curiosity. And so we are constantly pushing each other to learn, to read. We have very active listserv where we're always sharing new information. And so the latest thing that we are really looking at has been this issue and the space around AI companions and understanding both the psychology of how and why people are using AI companions, the loneliness epidemic. So we are both trying to understand the social science, the brain science, and the psychology of our reasons why this has skyrocketed in the last 2 years, the use of companions for social, relational engagement. And then we think about it also from a space of governance. What do we as a society think is okay in this space? Who should be using it and when? Are there any points of friction that we need to add into the system? What is our relationship as parents with young people who are using these companions, and what should the restrictions be? And so we are constantly kind of iterating and learning in these spaces. And then we quickly try to move to act, to support, to work with researchers and policymakers and those who are really digging in on these issues. But that's one of the areas that we're really engaged in. And I'm so thankful for our team and the leadership to kind of hold the complexity of this moment.
I wanted to probe a little bit of just your specific leadership style. As I think once you've reached a certain level of leadership, you know, you're making the big decisions.
Yeah.
I often share, right? If it's arriving at my desk, someone didn't figure it out before it got here. Right? Like there are plenty of smart people.
Brilliant people.
Right. There's brilliant people at every organization, right? Like if it's at your desk, you're like, okay.
Yeah.
Is there some centering person or advice or presence or practice that helps you when that path is not clear?
You know, I always think about President Barack Obama. He often talked about this. By the time he gets his desk, it's either a bad or a worse decision that he has to he had to negotiate through. So I will say this. I think one, my leadership style, I try to lead with love and joy. And my team will say that I am the type of leader that leads with head and heart. I'm a lawyer by training. And so you have this deeply analytical kind of background. But I live in heart space, and I try to see things from a relation and a relational lens in everything that I do. Because I often think that if we did a better job of taking care of one another and trying to see one another, it makes all the other work better and easier. And that's hard to do sometimes. I recognize that. But I think it is worth the investment on the people side first.
Yeah.
So then the quality and the relationship in the team is stronger. So that's like how I would categorize my leadership. But when it comes to make hard decisions, there are a few things. So I think one, I'm a collaborative decision maker. So one of the things I learned about myself early is I like to have a team of very different thinkers, of the kind of organizational leader, the kind of leader who focuses on deep policy expertise and know-how, to bring someone in the team who may have more of an experiential background. It might be closer to kind of a youth lens. And so I try to have that reflected in the team that I bring in. So that's the first thing. And I try to hear from all those people as we make a decision. But at some point, I aggregate all of that data and I move and I make my decision. And at that point, I'm usually pretty decisive. And I will try to add in if we can do and or, right? So can we move here, take a little bit of the improv, and can we move in this direction? Like, I will look at what's possible. Can we try to meet all of the needs? But after a while, I'm going to make that decision and I'm going to believe in that decision and I'm going to make sure all of the team is supportive of that decision so that we don't have the kind of triangulation that sometimes happens in organizations, which I think undercuts leadership and it undercuts the strength of the decisions that are made and bring everybody together along the way.
In that answer you shared, you lead with love and joy.
Lead with love and joy.
I love that. And I'd love to know, how do you cultivate joy in your work? Because these times aren't easy. You're working on hard things.
They are not. So we do a few things. Food is one of my love languages. So we just have a company practice that every other week we have a community food day. And so everybody comes into the office. If you're in a location where you can, and we come into the office and we try to eat together as a team and not work, but just literally eat and catch up with one another and spend some time with each other. I think that we don't do enough to celebrate the small wins. So we have a frequent use of emojis in team meetings, conversations. We're an active chat organization. And it feels silly, but like giving someone like a shout out with like a heart when they've said something that's connected with you means something to that person who sees that. And we have a few people on our team who are like fabulous at dad jokes. And so like we highly encourage them to keep the dad jokes going. And we try to do practices throughout the year, spending time together as a team. And some of that time not being organized time, but just collaborative time with one another. And I think developing those rituals, you create a different culture. Our curiosity value, so that everything isn't met with like immediate, will this work? Which oftentimes is a corporate culture, right? Like, I can't take that risk because it'll cost money. I can't move in this direction because it's risky. We actually want you to try, and we are okay with the failure. And we have that as one of our values of how we show up. Now, we have a deep learning practice, so we want to understand what happened, why this didn't work, what we can do better next time. But we want us to at least try. And I think that helps to kind of change culture.
At least sometimes we say fail and fail fast. Like, don't be afraid of it.
I love that.
Because, right, like, it's a lesson. It made me actually think as you were talking, I wonder, is there, one of the things we try to do for our members and for our listeners is, as they're listening to these amazing leaders, is there a habit, a tool, or even a mindset that you swear by these days? Like, what are the things that help you navigate your leadership?
So I have to apologize because my phone keeps on going off, because one of my habits is I have alarms throughout the day to do certain things. And I have a new phone and I don't know how to do it that well. So
that's okay.
So like, in a spirit of vulnerability, I just want to tell you that's one of the things.
That's what's happening.
But I have a few reminders. So I'm a person of deep faith. So I have a reminder every day to pray and to recenter myself. I try once a week to do some type of journaling or meditative practice. And that's just for me. But I have to sit back and I have to reflect. I often go through each of the Star Wars, Star Trek, Deep Space Nine, like as a my mindless TV.
Oh, I love
some people
that.
go
That's
Housewives.
Really
I go Deep Space Nine. Okay. I have that. And there's just like a comfort in that for me. Like, I just go back to kind of core.
I imagine that also brings you joy.
And it brings me joy and it makes me happy and it gives me ideas of things to study and have us work on.
Oh, I love it.
And I recently tore my ACL.
Mm-hmm.
I'm coming back from an injury. And as a part of that, I've had to get serious about my health.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've become much better at carving out time to exercise.
Mm.
And all of the kind of longevity studies of life say that you have to do something, you have to move. And so I go out, I touch grass, I take the walk. I love my Peloton, but I've tried to start to develop that as a more regular practice.
In the same kind of vein, would love for you to share, has there been something that you've heard or that you've read recently that has really inspired you or stuck with you?
Oof. Oh my goodness. So I just picked up The Empire of AI. It is a big book in a number of spaces in our kind of tech philanthropy that really looks at how have we gotten to this point, into this place of, again, sometimes a market concentration around AI. What has been the motivations for some of the companies, and really understanding this space. So I think it's important for us, both as someone who believes deeply in the transformative power of technology, and I see it as a bridge. I think AI and our tech future is not determined. It is not destiny. It is design. Tech is a reflection of who designs it, who builds it, who develops it. And so this book is kind of sharing some of what I know, but also some terrifying facts about why it's so important that we wrest back this moment for us. And so that's one of the books that I'm reading right now, Empire of AI.
Outside of work, what are other roles and identities that shape your leadership?
Yes. So I have a lot of roles outside of work. So I am a wife to a public servant, to an elected official who loves his community and believes deeply. Shout out Will Jawando. Hi, Annie. We met when we were kids, it feels like. We're celebrating 19 years of marriage this year. Mildred met us, I think right after we got married.
Yes, you all were babies.
We were like children. And we've been able to grow together and really build the kind of future and world that we want to see, and committed to building together. And that's been great to kind of grow up with someone.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I'm a mom of 4, and I have 4 amazing babies who range from 6 to 15. My baby just had her birthday, and so it's hard for me to digest. And so I'm dealing with both, first grade, working on learning how to read and do math, and then high school. Who am I? How do I identify? How am I showing up in the world? What do I want to do? And everything in between. And so that's been a new and fun. I'm an auntie. I'm someone deeply engaged in my local community. You'll often find me doing something on the weekends, or in a community parade, or in a community kind of organized event. And I love that. It keeps me grounded. I have a very busy life, but those are the best roles that I have. And I love that. And I love that I was able to kind of build this family with my husband, and that we really love and enjoy being together. And I don't take that for granted, because I know that is not everybody's story. But I'm so grateful, because I think it also helps me to make me a better and a more thoughtful leader, because I think about my work not in the immediate, but I think about it over the course of history and life. What is my contribution while I'm here? And what is my contribution for these 4 brilliant, beautiful babies that I'm leaving them? And they deserve to have everything. And so what am I doing to make sure they have that?
Michele, I would love to hear, as you were just talking about a longer span of time. Think back to 23-year-old Michele.
Oh, she was fabulous. I mean, I'm fabulous, but
but if you had to tell her something, what's the piece of advice that you would give her?
Yeah, my 23-year-old self, I think I have always been widely optimistic. And I think maybe I doubted her
Mm-hmm.
My 23-year-old self doubted, was this possible? Like all these things that I want to do, and is it possible, and will it happen? And I think I would tell her to trust herself and be kind to her. And it is okay that things will not always come in the time you think it will come, but everything that is for you will be for you. And I think sometimes when you are young and ambitious and you want to do everything all at once, you're like, why isn't this happening? And so there was maybe an anxiousness that I had at 23 that now I feel comfortable, and there's a peace that you have. And I would just want to give that back to her. Like, you got it, girl.
Yes.
Just hold on to that. You got it.
Yeah. That's such a great piece of advice. And I hope that for many of our members and our listeners that they can absorb some of that, because I want to ask one last question. I think you're such an example of someone who's been in very different seats, and you've made a transition from public policy into the tech space and into other spaces. I don't even know if it's advice, but what would you share with anyone who's trying to make that kind of shift? What were there things that you thought through? How did that happen for you? Or what are some good practices that you would share with others who are thinking about it?
I have a mentor who reminded me that at different phases of your life, there's an expectation for you to be a certain thing. So in your 20s, you're not being necessarily looked at as a subject matter expert, but someone will want to see kind of your hustle, your grit, and your level of engagement and flexibility. And so you can develop a reputation for that. And in your 30s, you start to develop some expertise. And then by the time you get to your 40s, you got to know your stuff, and you have to show up every day and be prepared, because at that point, you're a representative for whatever organization.
Right.
And so I think the thread that I've always tried to hold in each of these spaces, whether it's in government, in the private sector, in the civil society, NGO space, and now in philanthropy and venture, has always been, there's been a piece from every opportunity that I've had that I bring with me. So in the NGO space, it is the understanding that you often have to make magic happen with very little resources. And so there's a creativity that I always try to show up in the world. And I use that in every space. In the private sector, there are demands that you have because your mission is to be a creative, perhaps innovative company, but you have shareholders that you have to respond to. And so what does that mean in holding all that complexity? So you try to put yourself in a space of, what do I have to do in this moment and as one part of this larger organization? And how do I show up well with the world that I have? And so I think about that now. With what I understand for the situation, how do I show up well? And I bring that with me in my kind of backpack or toolkit or magic box, whatever you want to call it, of gifts. And then I add in my joy, and I add in my creativity. I add in my deeply held values of connection and relationship. And I pull that all together. And those threads show up in all of my work. But I think I have been wise enough, and I think people sometimes have to step back and see, what are those things about you? Step back and kind of assess yourself, and so that you bring those threads in each space you move. And I hope to often be a bridge builder across difference and translate goals. I see myself as someone who is a builder of both ideas, people, and place. And I believe deeply in kind of building in different spaces. I look at that. I try to do that personalized needs assessment, but there are people who will remember me not because of what I did at a specific institution, but for who I am. And I developed who I am through all of these experiences, and just being really conscious and aware of that. And I think that makes a difference.
Absolutely. I think I'm gonna take from this I am a builder of ideas, people, and places. What a
Yes.
wonderful statement. And I think such a great guide for anyone who is trying to navigate their own leadership. So I appreciate that, Michele. Michele, this has been so fun.
This has been so fun. It went by so fast.
I know. It went by so fast. Thank you, Michele. Thank you for all of the vulnerability and the advice and just the honest and openness of sharing your story with us today. It's been so fun. I'm sure it's going to resonate with so many of our listeners.
I completely agree. This conversation and conversations like these remind us what leadership really is, that it's complex, imperfect, and human. To everyone tuning in, thank you for spending this time with us. Remember, leadership is as much about the questions as the answers. Take care until next time.
Thank you for listening to The Leaders Table. Please subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. And for more information about Lee, you can visit us online at wearelee.org.